The air was thick with tension as Officer Mark Sutherland cruised through the downtown streets, scanning the city with the sharp focus that had been drilled into him over the years. The early morning hours were usually quiet, but there was something about the thick fog rolling in from the harbor that seemed to make everything feel off. The city had its rhythms, its familiar streets, but something about today just didn't sit right. Sutherland had been patrolling these streets for over a decade, long enough to know that certain types of people and places had a way of catching your attention. He had his instinct honed to a razor's edge, something that was crucial in a job like his. It wasn't a matter of racial profiling. Not exactly. At least, he always told himself it wasn't. But he couldn't deny the nagging feeling that sometimes a gut instinct he relied on came with an unfair bias. That morning, as he rolled past the corner of 5th and Pine, his eyes immediately latched onto a man standing on the sidewalk. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed sharply. Too sharply, Sutherland thought, for someone just loitering around. The man's stance was relaxed, but there was something in his eyes that suggested he wasn't just a regular pedestrian. The black man appeared to be scanning the area with the alertness of someone who didn't quite belong, and Sutherland couldn't shake the sense that something wasn't right. Without a second thought, he slammed the brakes and pulled over to the curb. He couldn't put his finger on why, but this man was an anomaly. His dark skin and crisp suit seemed out of place, too polished for the gritty downtown neighborhood. Sutherland had seen enough to know that in his line of work, sometimes things just didn't add up. He stepped out of his patrol car, walking toward the man with measured steps. The man was standing still, not making any sudden movements, but his gaze shifted slightly towards Sutherland as he approached. There was no sign of alarm or recognition, just a calm demeanor, as if he'd been expecting this encounter. "Hey, you there!" Sutherland called out, his voice firm but controlled. "Can I ask what you're doing here?" The man turned toward him, his expression unreadable. "I'm just waiting for my ride." Sutherland narrowed his eyes. "Waiting for your ride? At this hour?" The man shrugged, his posture still relaxed. "Yes, officer. Is that a problem?" Sutherland's brow furrowed. It wasn't so much what the man had said, it was the way he had said it. There was a certain smoothness in his tone that Sutherland didn't like. The man's calm was almost too composed. It made Sutherland uneasy. He had dealt with people in similar situations before, and he usually didn't remain so cool under pressure. "Step over here, please," Sutherland ordered, reaching for his radio. The man didn't flinch. He simply complied, stepping toward the curb as Sutherland ran a quick check on his patrol car system. There was no immediate reason for concern, at least not from what the system was showing. His ID hadn't been flagged. There were no warrants, and no criminal record was linked to the name. But something in Sutherland's gut was telling him that this man wasn't as innocent as he appeared. Maybe it was the suit, the cool confidence, the easy way he moved. Sutherland couldn't place it, but he was about to let this man slip by without a little more investigation. "What's your name?" Sutherland demanded, his tone more forceful this time. The man hesitated for a fraction of a second before responding, "James Whitaker." Sutherland made a mental note of the name. He wasn't convinced. "How long you been in town, Mr. Whitaker?" "I've been here a few days on business," James replied, his voice smooth and unbothered. He hadn't even raised an eyebrow when questioned. He was too composed for someone who was supposedly waiting for a ride. Sutherland wasn't ready to let this go. There was something about this situation that felt off, and he was determined to get to the bottom of it. "You mind if I take a look at your ID?" James nodded, his expression still calm. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek black wallet, which he handed to Sutherland without hesitation. The officer took the wallet, glancing at the ID inside, and his eyes froze for a moment as he read the name. James Whitaker. Sutherland blinked, his hand pausing. The name sounded familiar. He quickly ran a check on the ID, confirming the details. The results that appeared on the screen were clear. This man was no criminal, no troublemaker. In fact, he was a high-ranking executive at a successful tech company based in another city, someone with no history of any run-ins with the law. Sutherland's heart sank as he realized his mistake. The moment he had seen the name on the ID, the weight of the misunderstanding hit him. He had misjudged this man completely. What had started as a routine check for a suspicious individual had turned into something entirely different. An embarrassing mistake that could easily cost him his reputation. He looked up at James, who hadn't changed his expression. James was watching him, but there was no anger or frustration in his eyes. Only the calm, measured gaze of someone who had been through this sort of thing before. "You're free to go," Sutherland muttered, his voice suddenly lacking the authority it had carried moments before. He felt foolish, his stomach twisting with regret. It wasn't supposed to be like this. He wasn't supposed to be the officer who made an unfounded stop. James held the officer's gaze for a long moment before offering a polite nod. "Thank you, officer. I appreciate your time." Sutherland stood there for a moment, watching as James walked away, his step steady and unhurried. The whole exchange had been a blur, a mistake, but the regret had settled deep in Sutherland's chest. He had let his own assumptions, his own biases, get in the way of seeing the truth. He watched James disappear into the misty street, and for the first time in his career, he questioned whether he was truly cut out for this job, not because of the lack of crime or danger, but because of the danger of his own mind, the bias he hadn't realized he was carrying. As he returned to his patrol car, the weight of the moment hung heavy on him. He sat behind the wheel for a long time, reflecting on the lapse in judgment. It wasn't just about the mistake, but what the mistake said about him, about the assumptions he had made about a person based on the color of his skin and his appearance. And as James Whitaker walked away into the fog, Sutherland couldn't help but feel that he had let something precious slip through his fingers, a chance to be better, to do better, a chance that had been ruined by his own prejudices. But at least now he knew. The question was, would he ever truly learn? As Officer Mark Sutherland sat in his patrol car, staring out into the thick fog that had settled over the city, the weight of the morning's events pressed down on him. He had made a mistake. No, a series of mistakes, and the realization was like a heavy stone lodged in his chest. It was a mistake he couldn't undo, no matter how many times he replayed the events in his mind. There was no getting around the fact that he had unfairly judged someone based on assumptions rooted in his own biases. But what stung the most was that the mistake wasn't just a misstep. It was a reflection of something deeper. He had let his own prejudices cloud his judgment. He had failed to see the person before him for who he truly was, instead letting stereotypes dictate his actions. And worse, he had done so unconsciously, without even realizing how deeply ingrained these biases had become in the way he saw the world. The lesson hit him slowly, but forcefully. We are all shaped by our experiences, our surroundings, and the things we learn without even knowing we're learning them. Sutherland had spent his career on the lookout for danger, learning to trust his instincts in situations where trust was essential. But what he hadn't learned was that instinct, when left unchecked, could become a dangerous thing. He had learned to trust his gut, but in that moment, his gut had failed him. His instinct had been born out of a lifetime of subtle messages, of biases both big and small that society had taught him, whether he wanted to admit it or not. To truly see people, we must look beyond the surface, beyond the biases and assumptions that are often ingrained in us. Every person is a story of their own, full of experiences and complexities that cannot be reduced to a set of preconceived notions. Sutherland had failed to see James Whitaker for the man he truly was, a successful, respected professional, not just another face in the crowd. The next time, he promised himself he would look deeper. He would take the time to see the human being before he jumped to conclusions. It wasn't about never making mistakes. Everyone made mistakes, but it was about learning from them, owning them, and becoming better for it. Real growth doesn't come from never falling. It comes from getting up after you do and choosing to be better next time. Sutherland started the engine of his patrol car, but he didn't drive away right away. He sat there for a few minutes, reflecting on the lesson that had unfolded before him in such a sharp, painful way. We all have work to do on ourselves, in our hearts, in how we view the world. The road to becoming better, he realized, wasn't about pretending that you were already perfect, but acknowledging your imperfections and striving for growth, no matter how uncomfortable the journey might be. As the city came to life around him, Sutherland pulled out of the parking spot, his mind quieter than it had been in years. The road ahead might be long, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was on the right path, one step at a time, Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more moments like this. Tune in for the next chapter of unexpected encounters and life-changing realizations.